Black Panther is directed by Ryan Coogler and is the 18th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as it is the first film in the 10-year anniversary of the franchise. The film stars Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, who is now the new king of Wakanda after the death of his father during the events of Civil War. He has to kind of ravel with the problems of the past with his father, what his father did in the past, but also to try to figure things out for himself of what is to him a good leader. And in comes Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who is kind of the counterbalance to his own motivations. I really enjoyed this film. Is it a perfect film? No. Every single Marvel Cinematic Universe film is not perfect. And this is coming from a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I have watched ever since 2008 with Iron Man. And as time goes on, the franchise will change over time. And I can clearly see like a clear difference in style, tone, genres over the past 10 years. And Black Panther is certainly a good start to what is considered to be one of the pinnacle years for the Marvel Studio brand. And Black Panther is a good example of this. Now, Black Panther is not without its flaws. So let's get into the flaws first, because there isn't a lot of them. It's just there's a couple things that didn't quite work. So let's start off with the CG/green screen. There are times when the CG is fairly noticeable, and especially in the final act fight scene, which is a problem that I had with Wonder Woman. But the thing is that the villain is quite different from Wonder Woman. Where the villain in Wonder Woman was just kind of vague and not clearly defined, there's no characterization for the character, Black Panther actually gives you a good, relatable character. Now, one drawback that I have with this, and I noticed it on the opening night fan event, is that the relationship between Killmonger and T'Challa is kind of like Professor X and Magneto. That isn't a bad thing, but it just kind of presents this sort of duality between one issue, one side of the issue, where you can have multiple different fracturing opinions of said issue, on one side of it at least. And I appreciate that. I really do. And given, the current context in politics, this is a movie that needed to come out at this time. It's fairly well conceived, and it's not in your face about its politics. If you're thinking you're going to go into this movie and be kind of, chastised as an audience member or, getting preached to, you're not going to get it. This is a movie that knows its audience, that knows what it needs to be in order to be both entertaining and also insightful. This is honestly one of the more tonally different films of the franchise, because most of the films up until now have always been action heavy. They've been action heavy mixed with fun comedy, fun banter, and you get some of that, you really do, but this is more of a story about T'Challa, the actual human element of the story, and I really do appreciate those stories. Because, when you really look at it from a surface level, it's just a guy dressed up as a giant cat who goes around slashing people using technology, on its surface level. So I think it was a good idea for the writers, Ryan Coogler and I can't remember the other guy's name, Joe. I'll just call him Joe, because there was two writers for this film, to actually go into the deeper elements of what makes T'Challa a character, a politician, a king, a warrior, a leader. And I like that. And that brings me to the next positive. That was a positive. That part was a positive. So with another positive I have with the film is that Wakanda is fairly well realized, and I kind of want to learn more about the culture, the vibrancy of life that's there. There's just so much that's put into the nation of Wakanda, and the whole background for how Wakanda is made. I wanted to learn more, because it really did feel like, a movie that had some interesting stuff, some interesting backstory, and I love the influences in both in the combat and the armor and the Uh, Costume design, the buildings, pretty much I really enjoyed the whole art direction, the choreography. I liked it all. It's some of it is unconventional for the franchise, but I really did enjoy it. There was a behind the scenes section after the movie for the opening night fan event at Regal, and I thought it was a really cool behind the scenes section. And they were saying that the choreography was actually inspired by some of Africa's sort of national sort of choreography for fighting. You know, parts of it were used from Zulu, which is really cool. I have nothing else to say for the choreography because there's not a lot of it. It's not very action heavy, and that can deter some people from this movie. It's not very action oriented, and yes, that can sort of detract people's scores a bit. But I personally am more of a fan of, people taking an honest look at the character and saying, what does this character mean? Who is this character on a personal level, on an emotional level, on a mental level? And that's what this film majorly is. But the story has some problems, or at least kind of just one or two. One of them is a nitpick, but the first one, the one that's not really a nitpick, is that the first act can be a bit slow, which is kind of odd, and it's kind of a mix between the Black Panther stuff that's interesting and then the superhero stuff that we commonly know, but the first act is just kind of slow. It's just slow. That's not really a nitpick, it's just something I felt in the movie. It was just kind of slow. But afterwards, fortunately enough, it picks up afterwards. And the other one that's kind of a nitpick is that the middle credit scene, where T'Challa goes to the United Nations to discuss, opening borders and opening secrets, I felt that that should have been in the actual main movie and not outside of the main movie, because it's still a continuing piece of the story. The end credits and middle credit scenes are meant to be kind of Easter eggs / teasers for future movies. I didn't feel like the middle credit scene was in of itself a teaser. It was part of the story. So that's just my thoughts. That's just my thoughts on the middle portion of that movie. But overall, it's a fairly well done movie. It's shot beautifully. The music is mostly good. With influences from African musical tribes and whatnot. I really enjoyed the music. I'm not a big Kendrick Lamar fan, to be honest, because I haven't heard a lot of his music, mostly because I live in a sheltered bubble, but that's just neither here nor there. I felt like Black Panther was well done, well acted, and while the film has two villains, this really is more of an Eric Killmonger villain movie. Ulysses Claw, played by Andy Serkis, is a good little side villain, and he's fairly enjoyable, but make no mistake about it, this is Eric Killmonger's film. I really liked Eric Killmonger. He is a very complicated villain, and you can understand where he's coming from, and he's probably one of the more complex villains of the MCU. Some people have said he's as good as Loki. I would almost say that, but I don't quite know. Again, to summarize, it's a fairly well-made film. I enjoyed it. It's not the greatest film in the world, but I feel like it's good for the MCU, and it's a good start to Marvel's 10-year anniversary. So, as a whole, I'm going to give Black Panther a B+. Again, it's a well-made film with some great qualities. There is some stuff that kind of detracts from it, but overall, it is good. So the other film I watched was Early Man, Aardman's new animated feature. Now, I'm not really one of those people that is huge into soccer, or as the Brits like to say, football, but I am of the opinion that sports movies are just kind of enjoyable because they're all cheesy. And that's kind of what I got. So what is Early Man about? Well, Early Man is about a bunch of cavemen who get encroached upon by the Bronze Age, figuratively and literally, and one of the cavemen, named Doug, goes into the Bronze Age area of the valley and challenges the Bronze Age to a soccer match. And the person that wins gets the valley. And that's just kind of it. Yeah, no joke. That's just kind of it. And for a story as basic as that, it's okay. I don't think Aardman scripts need to necessarily be like grandiose or anything, because Aardman animations as a whole have had stories where it's just kind of bare bones. And Early Man is probably one of their weakest films in terms of script writing, because there's not much there. There's not much tangible, but it felt like some of the stuff towards the third act of this film really felt like it came from an actual soccer fan, where they were talking about how refs are just kind of blatantly, passive aggressively kind of for a certain team, so they'll like let everything slide on their side, but once the other team is just like, oh well, you made a penalty, red card or whatnot. I don't know soccer. The voice acting in particular is pretty good. The animation, as always, is pretty good as well. Again, is this a perfect kids movie? No. I don't really have a lot of thoughts to say on Early Man. I think it's just an okay kids movie. You can go watch it. It's a fairly well-made film with good voice acting, good animation, a pretty enjoyable villain played by Tom Hiddleston of all people. But I enjoyed it. Is it perfect? No, but I think at the end of the day, that's just what Aardman is. They're okay, they're good craftsmen, and I'm excited to see what else they have, because I'm a huge fan of Aardman. I liked Wallace and Gromit, I liked Shaun the Sheep, I liked Chicken Run because that's an homage to The Great Escape. Pretty much, Aardman's on its game again, and Early Man shows that it has some heart, it has some enjoyable laughs, and at the end of the day, it's an enjoyably fun flick. So I'm going to give Early Man a B.